This is like, it's like Capcom was watching my videos, or they were listening to me somehow, because a lot of, like, these are some of the things that I was asking for. These were the things that I was saying. These don't make sense for Chun Li to have issues in these areas. Right. These are the things that I was talking about all the time, but people always tell me that, no, you don't know what you're talking about with Chun Li. But then the patch notes are outside of like one thing, which I'm gonna get to later. Outside of that one specific thing that I mentioned, Chun Li needs, everything else that I complained about, pretty much they fixed. Alright there, greetings to all of my Chun Li warriors. Welcome back to another Sage's Dojo session. This is your host, Sage Armageddon. Welcome. This is a very rare occasion. It's a very special occasion for our dearest Chun Li here. So I decided to go ahead and actually record things a little bit more proper. So the microphone and audio quality should be significantly better than it was while using that PlayStation earbud that I normally record with. Now, if you're probably, well, why don't you always do it like this? Well, I have my reasons specifically. It's to basically help make juggling this and other content that I create a little bit easier. As I mentioned probably plenty of times, I have multiple channels that I'm trying to keep up with. So this, as I mentioned, I don't expect for this channel to be necessarily a high quality thing to take off. So it's just to help people, but I'm getting off track here. This is to celebrate some of the new changes that have been made to Chun Li here. As you noticed, as of today, March 17th, Capcom has released a recent patch that has apparently affected every character in the game. So there are a number of cool things that they have done for our dearest Chun Li here, and I wanted to go over some of those things. Now, one of the biggest things here, and I think this is kind of a game changer, though it might not seem like that much at first, is they made it so that Chun Li's light Hazanshu it does a knockdown on hit. My best Rufomonger impressions, right? It actually knocks down on hit now, which is freaking sick. Before, the only thing that you would do is you would net 0 frame advantage if you hit your opponent with a clean hit. So in order to do anything, you had to get a punish counter, which means you had to jump over a projectile, which, even though in the patch notes Capcom states that they removed the projectile invincibility, it was a lie that this had any type of invincibility. You were not jumping over any projectiles outside of like maybe a jury fireball with this. Like any other projectile, you were definitely going to sit on a fireball. That's one of the biggest changes, I think. And the reason being is that not only can you you can run Oki. You have different Oki situations that you can get with this. You can dash up and actually get a meaty grab, if I can just time it correctly. Right. You can dash up and get a meaty 5 frame like this, which should allow for you to, get them to the corner, get your combos going, stuff like that, right? Definitely really cool changes right there. And you can also do some drive rush stuff too. All right. Now the drive rush stuff is going to be a little bit different, but what it does is it actually implements her heavy punch, which I'm not timing it right, but this is a meaty hit right here. Because on wake up, the opponent is, let me go ahead and get Ryu to stop jabbing so you can see the frame data proper. You are plus 21, so you can get exactly a perfect meaty if you do the heavy punch here. And this is good because there are other things that you can do per se. You can do things like this, right? Or you can do something like this. But this has the farthest range. It also gives you a freak ton of meter back too. So if you, let's say if you use a lot of your drive gates here, you see that? You see how much that gives you as a heavy attack? Not that much. This gives you it gives you almost half of the bar back pretty much. So this move gives you a lot more meter back. It also does a lot of drive gauge damage to your opponent if they decide that they want to block, right? Now, something else that's cool about this ability is that if your opponent tries to drive impact you as well, you have enough time to retaliate. As long as you actually do it as a perfect meaty. As you can see here, you have plenty enough time to retaliate, which is cool, right? So that is definitely a change that they made. They also made it so that this... Let's go ahead and set Ryu to block here. They also made it so that this move on block is only -5. They did reduce the travel time before, as I will demonstrate. Before, when you did a Hazanshu, it didn't go as... if you started the fight exactly at neutral like this, it would actually connect with them from here. So they reduced the range of this move, so you have to get a little bit closer. But if you actually space it well, it's really hard to punish her. Ryu has a very far-reaching 5-frame move, so he has a better chance of reaching her. But if you space it correctly, he can't get you, right? So that's one of the cool things with it. You can set up space traps with this, and like I said, if you do it with the proper spacing, they can't really punish you. So, and like I say, and one of the biggest things about this move that I did not mention yet is that, remember, if you've been paying attention to my dojo sessions, you remember me saying that Chun Li needs teeth. I always said that Chun Li doesn't have any teeth. They need to give her something to strike fear into the opponents. While this isn't necessarily the most revolutionary thing, this is a jump scare. Before, with Chun Li, nobody had to, as long as they weren't whiffing any buttons and they were not in range to get hit by your normal so you could drive rush into them, there was nothing to fear from Chun Li. So if you're just playing here in neutral, for example, you didn't have to be afraid of anything. When you're fighting a character like Ken, you had to be aware. You had to be ready for Dragon Nash. You had to be ready for him to try to throw a fireball and then run behind it and stuff like that, right? But mainly, you had to be ready for him to do the Dragon Nash. Kimberly, you have to be ready for her to teleport out of nowhere. Ed, you have to be wary of ropes. Honda, you got to be ready for butt slams and headbutts, right? Blanca balls. Cammy, Spin Knuckle. I think you get the point. A lot of these characters, they have things they have crack speed jump scare moves that are very difficult to actually respond to. And if you can't deal with them, then they pretty much get a free win, either by destroying your drive gauge for free or by getting free frame advantage and putting you into a tornado, right? So that's one of the things. Chun-Li's never had anything like that to strike fear into the opponent when they're within a specific range. Now they have to be careful. Before, yeah, sure, people would look out for this, but this is so reactable. 32 frames is crazy, right? All right, like so, like that move's entire startup takes longer than the whole startup and recovery of a heavy punch, right? This is hyper reactable. Like, nobody was ever getting caught by this unless you made a hard read on a projectile. This move is pretty much a jump scare. It's 3 frames faster than drive impact, which is something I notoriously cannot react to, right? So this is pretty much a jump scare. So that means that your opponents are going to be more on edge. They're going to have to watch out, because there is a good chance that you might just whip this move out. And if you space it correctly, they can't punish you for doing it. So you are incentivized to throw this out. And if they are ducking, if they're blocking low because they're scared of getting their ankles hit, then you can just whip this move out. And you can do it close range. You can do it further from here. It doesn't really matter, right? So, and as we demonstrated, once you get that knockdown, you get to run Oki on your opponent, and I'll go ahead and demonstrate that again. So we're going to do the heavy punch Oki here. See? Another benefit to this too is it also doesn't require any meter. So if you are in Burnout and you decide to use this move, you can still follow up on your opponent. You do have to be careful though, because if you do this too far away, you're not going to be able to do the dash Oki. You're going to whiff. So if you do it from too far away, what you're gonna have to do is dash up and jab or something like that. I'm mistiming it right now, so do something like this, maybe get a counter hit into spinning bird kick or something like that, right? But if you do it from too far away, these options won't work from a dash. But if you have meter, you're pretty much going to be drive rushing after this, right? Because if your opponent blocks that, if the opponent blocks this, you're +1 in their face. Since you are +1, you pretty much can beat them if you do a jab, right? So if you do this sequence right here, you can jab at them and then do your normal stuff, right? That's a big boom. And of course, like I said, you get a lot of drive gauge back, right? You get a lot of drive gauge back from doing that. So you are very incentivized to use this move, right? So this is one of the biggest changes for Chun Li, 100%. I know a lot of people aren't going to think it's that good. At pro level or in super high level, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be that much of a difference because people have really, really strong defense up there. But everywhere else, high level, intermediate, beginner, this move is going to make a huge difference for Chun Li, mark my words, just because of the fact that the opponent has to be aware of it. The threat of this move makes it possible for somebody to lose to something. If you've ever heard the concept losing to a move without the opponent using it, pretty much what that means is that you're so afraid of something that they can do because of how oppressive or annoying it is, that it causes you to perform suboptimally and it distracts you. It makes it so that your mental stat gets overloaded. Think of when you were a beginner and you didn't know how to deal with Honda headbutts. And you're like, oh my gosh, he's going to do that headbutt. He's going to do the headbutt, right? And you're trying to look out for it so you can try to anti-air, hit him out of it, and then you get blown up by it. But even though he's not using it, you get blown up by everything else, right? Those are pretty much the changes that they made for her light Hazanshu. This is going to make a very big difference because before, like I stated, you were hyper negative. You were going to get beguiled if your opponent blocked that. Even though it had quote unquote projectile invincibility, that was a lie because you're not going to arc over a projectile with this unless it was Jury. Chun Li was legitimately suffering from Jin syndrome from Tekken 7, which is where she has a tool for every situation, but it only comes up like 1 out of 100 matchups, right? Nobody else's projectile were you ever going to jump over with this, except for Jury. And even then, you could still sit on the fireball pretty easily. So since you had to be relatively close, most juries aren't going to throw a fireball around this range, right? So this move pretty much didn't have that much application, unfortunately. But now it does. Now on hit, you get to follow up with something, right? So that's great. That's an awesome buff. That's going to make a big difference. Let's go ahead and move on to some of the other stuff that they did. One of the other changes that they made is to it's to Chun-Li's forward strike. So it's this move right here. When you go into Serenity Stance and you push light kick, they extended the range of the move so that it's easier to actually do a combo off of this move and this move. This is it's like Capcom was watching my videos, or they were listening to me somehow, because a lot of these are some of the things that I was asking for. These were the things that I was saying. These don't make sense for Chun Li to have issues in these areas, right? These are the things that I was talking about all the time, but people always tell me that, no, you don't know what you're talking about with Chun Li. But then the patch notes are outside of one thing, which I'm going to get to later. Outside of that one specific thing that I mentioned, Chun Li needs, everything else that I complained about pretty much they fixed. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this. So if we have Ryu, if we set Ryu to go ahead and whiff something here. Now, as I'm going to show with the before and after, this is not that big of a change, but it's better than it was. Pretty much how it works now is if you hit the opponent's, let me go ahead and get Ryu to stagger that a little bit. if you hit your opponent's main like the hurt box on their body, you're pretty much guaranteed to connect this move, right? This is going to hit so long as you make contact with their... If you hit their limb, it's still not going to work, unfortunately. But sometimes that's what whiff punishes are. So I really wish that they would make that a little bit better. They probably can make it so her Serenity Stance medium kick one of these patches. Hopefully they make it so you can combo with that. But it's still better than it was. It's still almost impossible to get it off of the medium kick, the crouching medium kick, because of how much pushback it has. But they made it, they wanted to make it so that there was a reason to use swift thrust, which is her 4/6 medium punch, right? Forward or back medium punch. So they wanted to make it have you a very good reason for you to use this specific move instead of using this. They help to differentiate a lot of things in her kit, I noticed. So pretty much if your opponent whiffs something, as long as you hit their main body, you're going to connect this. And the reason why this is important is because, as I mentioned plenty of times, and as we all know, one of Chun Li's main strategies, and one of the things that people gas her up for being so strong, is her neutral game, her ability to play footsies with people and outpoke people, right? She has pokes for days, right? The problem with that was when you were in Burnout, you had no way to get anything from this, really, because you don't have any meter. So if you wanted to get a whiff punish and actually get a knockdown on your opponent, you had to use this move right here, which is slow and very risky. And because of how slow it is, it's difficult to react to things but outside of like a crouching medium kick and a heavy punch on certain characters, right? Like Ryu or Ken, right? Outside of those two moves, you're not going to catch anything else with this because it's so slow, right? You would have to do this preemptively to get a punish on somebody doing a crouching medium punch or something like that. So this move was very slow, and it's very risky to use. So if you were in Burnout, especially, your strategy is completely offline. It was already bad enough that your strategy was opponent dependent, meaning that your opponent actually has to whiff buttons, and you have to respond to that, which is not the easiest thing to do. Right? This is a pretty fast-paced game. Even for high-level players, whiff punishing is not necessarily easy. So all of these cards stacked against Chun Li made it so that it was just... It just was not very efficient to try to apply her strategy. It's not proactive, right? It was very opponent dependent, which is something that I'm going to discuss in one of my newer dojo sessions in further detail. But I know I mentioned this before in other sessions. But now the changes that they made, and I'm going to show in a before and after, of course. But before, how this mess worked is that even if you hit their body, it would still whiff. So if you didn't have any meter, you were not going to get a punish counter. But now with the changes that they have made it so that if you make contact with your opponent's like main hurt box, that means hitting their actual body and not just their limb. If you hit their limb, as I mentioned before, you're not going to get anything. But if you get their main hurt box, then you can actually still get a knockdown combo like this and then run your Oki, right? But it also, if you do have meter, it also allows Chun-Li to be on the up and up over other characters, because now you can get virtually meterless whiff punishment. You use very little meter there. Or if you really want to use no meter, you could just do a medium spinning, and I'm doing the wrong stuff here, apologies. Medium spinning bird kick, and then just run your Oki that way. There aren't a lot of characters in this game that can whiff punish you and get you to the corner, I mean very close to the corner, without using any meter. Now that they have increased the range of this is a little bit more consistent. I would like to see some improvement so that you can still catch them even if you hit just their limb. But it's still an improvement, as you can see. It's in the before and after, you're gonna see the difference, right? So that's an improvement they made. Technically, it's supposed to work for the crouching medium kick too, but this move has a lot of pushback, so it's quite clear that they want you to use swift thrust instead of crouching medium kick to whiff punish people. So yeah, that's one of the benefits of this change right here. So this move, it definitely it is an improvement. That is objective, right? It's an improvement. And some other stuff that we have here is that they made some improvements to the snake strike, as we're gonna see here. That's this move right here, which is her medium punch slide. And in the before, what I'm gonna show is before it was 7 frames. And it also was only active for, I believe, 11 frames. Now it is active for 12 frames. It's active. It remains active for 1 frame longer, which means that there's a better chance for your opponent to run into this if you use it preemptively, right? If you're trying to catch your opponent running into you, if they're moving forward or pushing buttons, you have a good chance of counter hitting them. This is also, it comes out faster, so that means one of the issues that Chun Li had is that if you did this, you pretty much had to do this preemptively, and you see how she's still blocking that fireball? You see that? Even though I'm in the stance, she's still blocking the fireball. This makes it so that you can kind of slide under it. You can almost be Kimberly. Not quite. You still have to be slightly preemptive, and apologies for messing this up. But now you can slide under that mess very quickly, almost on reaction. They made it faster for that, but also it changed from certain setups now. So you can do it off of crouching medium punch, which I am not sure why you would do this off of a crouching medium punch. I guess because it's like, hey, you don't have any, if you don't have any meter, I suppose you can get a knockdown. So if you just happen to catch your opponent with a crouching medium punch, but if you just catch your opponent with a crouching medium punch, it's probably going to be a punish counter or a counter hit. It's unlikely that you're going to just do a clean hit, but I guess it's still a buff. So you can chain these two together. But one of the big changes with this move now after the change is that this is a direct buff to, indirect buff, I should say, to her standing heavy punch. As I'm going to demonstrate, before with her standing heavy punch, you could not get any real follow-up after a clean hit on your opponent. So if you hit your opponent with standing heavy punch, you couldn't do anything. This didn't combo. Obviously, that didn't combo since it's slower. The only way you could get a combo is if you were like right in their face so that you can do her Serenity Stance light punch. But the range is abysmal on this, as we can see. And the whole point of this move is it's a poke. Nobody was going to use her heavy punch point blank, right? Like, that was not going to happen. So this is a poke. So now how it works is that, and it wasn't like this before. Now if you land a hit on your opponent and you confirm it, you can actually go into her snake strike. Which means that her snake strike leaves you 21 frames of advantage on block. It's the same thing as this after a knockdown. So the Oki situation is going to be the exact same now for these two moves. So after you do this, you could do something like this. However, that is predictable and it's probably going to get perfect parried, right? But you could probably YOLO it once in a while to catch your opponent, right? And get a meaty setup for some cheese, right? So that's something that you can do. But you can also do the Oki options that we mentioned before. If we get Ryu to, just to demonstrate, if we go ahead and get him to do this on Wake Up, as long as you do it close enough. If you do it too far, obviously you're not going to be able to actually catch him because you're going to whiff the throw. But if you're close enough to it, then you can dash up, and I'm mistiming it. But this is definitely a meaty, right? Just mistiming it a little bit. And you can also do that too. And you can also do the same thing with this, like we demonstrated before, right? Because it's the same frames as if you get a knockdown with this. So this is a buff. This is one of the things that I mentioned. I mentioned that her heavy punch is risky, but there is like no reward unless you happen to punish counter your opponent. Now you have a reason to always go into stance on with this, even on block, because obviously if you do this move and you don't transition into stance, you're not going to be able to hit confirm. You're not going to be able to say, oh, I got a counter hit, let me do this. It's too late. Your window to cancel into the stance is gone. So now you have a reason to preemptively always cancel into the stance. And this gives you enough time to hit confirm to see what is happening. And I messed that one up right there. Let's go ahead and do this closer to the corner just so you can see what I'm talking about here. So you can actually, this is tricky. I still need some training with this, but as you can see, you can hit confirm this. You just have to be on your P's and Q's, right? So if you get a counter hit, you can do the Serenity Stance light kick, and if you just get a clean hit, you can go into the snake strike and then run your Oki from there. This also makes it so that you don't need to use any meter to get anything from this, right? As we stated, Chun Li is capable of fighting back somewhat in Burnout now, which is these are some pretty good significant buffs, I think. They might not seem like that on paper, but they will make a huge difference in her overall game plan. I can foresee that. So this is a very big buff. This move is like her bread and butter. It's like one of the best pokes for her character archetype in the game. It goes extremely far. It goes from one zip code to the, like, this reaches all the way to Africa. That's how far this move goes. But it sucks because it was so risky and there was no reward. But now there is a reward. Your opponent does block it. There is counterplay to this. They can beat you out of your options because you are wide open while you're transitioning into the stance. However, they have to be careful, because if they try to pick an option and you don't go into the stance, they might end up whiffing, because if you do this from max range, even crouching medium kicks will miss, right? They would have to do a heavy punch or something. So if they try to do like a crouching medium kick to catch you, they're not going to be able to really catch you and punish and actually counter hit you or interrupt you, right? So you can play a mind game with this. Your opponent doesn't know what you're going to do, even though you are negative. You can do something like this. Let's go ahead and get Ryu to do a bunch of different options. We're going to get him to do these options. Sorry, we're going to get him to do these on block. Just a bunch of different things, and it's going to be random, right? Now, he was able to beat me with that one. I got him with that one. That one was too slow. He's doing crouching medium kick. That's what that is. Or I could just say, if you do this so much and your opponent's like, oh, he's going to keep doing that, you can just do this and then wait for them to do something and then whiff punish them. Right. So, and if they're doing, let's go ahead and crouching light punch here. Crouching light punch. If you are in range to actually use this, crouching light punch is very good at interrupting that. But then you can use this one. This moves her box so that the crouching light punch doesn't really work. So there's counterplay to almost everything in this game, but you can play mind games with it now. So you have more incentive, more than not, to almost always convert into the stance unless you're trying to bait your opponent, right? So now that if you get a clean hit, you can actually get a reward off of it. That is great. I'm glad that Capcom is listening, right? Thank you for making it so that you can actually get a reward off of this. Right, now you can actually get some use out of this move, and then you can Oki it, and then, you know, it's bringing her kit together. It's bringing her Serenity Stance and her tools together to actually make the character even more unique while helping to solve some of her issues. Thank you for that, Capcom. Seriously. You guys are doing some good work out here. They also made some universal changes to, this is every character, their overheads are now, their overheads are all now -3. So Chun Li's overhead is now -3, which means that if you get a meaty with it, you're only +1 instead of +2, and I'll show that with the before and after as well, some of the differences. So that also means that if you get a knockdown on your opponent and you go for this setup here, you're only +3 now. So it is a nerf. However, they also made the change to other characters. Other characters were closer after doing certain overheads. They moved them further away with more pushback. So now Chun Li is not at a disadvantage with her overhead because Chun Li was never in strike throw mix after your opponent blocks this. She was never in range for you to do like a strike throw off of this overhead that made sense. It always pushed them back pretty far. So this indirectly buffs her because now other characters don't have that advantage over her, which is good. But it also still is a nerf because you don't have as much frame advantage to work with. Right, so even if you do this meaty, instead of being +4, you're a +3. Those are some changes that we're going to, that I'm going to display some of the before for that so you can see what happened before with that as well. Apparently there's no combo scaling with her lightning kick barrage, which is this move here. The barrage are the 2 follow-ups. This is just the regular OD lightning kicks, but if you decide to follow up with it, they apparently, so it's, if I understand correctly, that this is pretty much a damage buff. So it doesn't, apparently that doesn't scale anymore. I'm not certain of the application with that. Lab Monsters will probably come out with that a little bit more because that's dealing with some really deep math. I haven't had enough time to really go into how these will structure with her combos. I don't foresee it making a huge difference in her mainline combos. Just like when they made the changes for this, is mainly just flashy changes, right? So it's not going to be something that's going to really like turn the matchup with this character on its head. But it is still a buff, so it's something to look forward to. I don't think that outside of the general nerfs to the overhead, I don't think that they did any nerfs to Chun Li at all. They actually did only buffs for this character, which is great because she needed her heavy punch and her light Hazanshu are by far the biggest changes, right? Her heavy punch. Now, if you're, let's say that you're in Burnout and you're fighting your opponent, you can actually do something now, right? You don't have to necessarily try to get your opponent to whiff and use this move, and this is the only way that you're going to be able to like do anything because you don't have any meter. Now Chun Li is capable, a lot of these changes help with her meter management indirectly because she was known for having to use a lot of meter. Let's go ahead and get our meter back here for a moment. She was known for, if you catch your opponent whiffing, you would have to burn meter. All right. So when you get them to that position, you are down almost 3 bars. So that means that if you do, as I explained before, let's go ahead and demonstrate. If you do a strike throw mix and you throw your opponent and you decide that you want to continue to pressure them, you're pretty much in Burnout at that point, right? But now, because of some of the changes that they made, much better meter management, because obviously when if you DRC while you are doing your combo from a DRC, drive rush cancel for those that are wondering, as you can see, her meter is not coming back. It's not going to come back until after you're done doing that. That's one of the ways that they balance the drive rush cancel combos. So she's not getting stuff back. But if you use an OD move like this, her meter starts coming back, as you can see. So you have a lot more meter to work with. You get them to the corner with less, or you don't even have to necessarily do that. Do the OD here. You can just do the medium and then walk up and throw. Whoops, I'm messing that up here. Or just use 1 bar and then throw them. See, and now you have meter to actually, when you throw them, you actually have meter to work with now. So this is a more viable option without putting you into Burnout, because like I stated before, getting your opponent to the corner pretty much, unless you just were a god at reading crouching medium kick and heavy punch whiffs so that you can catch them with this move here, you would have to, if your opponent whiffs something, you would have to, these tools right here, you would have to DRC. And it wasn't really much of an option. Right? But now, because of the changes that they made, albeit I hope that they would make it a little bit better, but your drive gauge management is going to be significantly better now, right? Like it's gonna help so that Chun Li can actually continue to pressure the opponent after a throw, because one of the things with it is like even though this isn't as good as throw Oki per se, because you don't have the option to throw them again, so it's not a strike throw mix situation, and this can easily be parried. But now you have the option to do this because you're gonna have meter to work with now, right? So that you can actually try to continue to pressure your opponent, put them into a blender. That's going to make a huge difference. Now, they're not going to be easily implemented changes, unfortunately, because they're still keeping her identity as being a workhorse, which means that you have to work very hard in order to get your rewards. You still have to, when you're fighting a high pressure match, it's still going to be a little bit difficult to be able to catch if you're getting a counter hit or not. Probably the best bet to do if you really want to be safe and you get a clean hit with this, the safest option you can do is just go for this move because it works for both. And you're guaranteed follow-up with this. Now, the only problem with that is predictable. Because if you do this and you drive rush, you can't get a grab. Unless you have really good manual timing. If you have good manual timing, you can get them. Let's go ahead and get Ryu to wake up with a light punch so we can see it. See, this is I can frame kill this. I can pretty much mash this out. Let's go ahead and try that again. I can pretty much mash this out, as you can see here. Look at my inputs on the left. I'm mashing, right? Like it's gonna work almost every time. Pretty much. Like, so that the risk, you can mash this out. But if you try to do the throw, you can't do that. Unfortunately, there's no frame kill for the throw. The frame kill for the throw would be to do a regular dash up like this. Right. But if you do a regular dash, you can't get the heavy punch. So the thing about that is that if you go for this, your opponent can parry that. So you do have to be careful. There's counterplay to a lot of the things in this game. So it's not just going to be a free win if you're fighting somebody that's good, right? So, but the changes that they made are very good. The heavy punch, now that you can actually do this, even if you don't want to look for that counter hit flag and change your Serenity stance option depending on if you get a counter hit or not. If that's too much for you, you can just do this option every time as long as you confirm a clean hit. Because you can still get Oki off of it. Like I said, you can still get the throw if you have good manual timing. But you have to have really good timing, because if you mistime it, you can get blown up for it, right? So if you have good manual timing, then you can actually make this a strike throw mix so that your opponent can't just parry you. So, but it's you can't get a picture perfect setup, as I'd like to say. I'm pretty sure that I covered all of the changes for Chun Li. Now, unfortunately, they did not fix Tensho kicks. She doesn't have a throw loop, which I don't really want her to have a throw loop, to be honest with you. Even though it's annoying losing to people that have throw loops. Tensho kicks, unfortunately, is still trash. They didn't fix that at all. There are no changes made to this. But they still did buff Chun Li. Chun Li got nothing but buffs, right? So, seeing as how they only buffed her, I think that they were able to understand that this character had some issues, right? So, and they were able to help iron out a lot of those issues. Now, I don't want to make this video too long. It's already a bit longer than it was supposed to be, but unfortunately, you know, when going through patch notes of this scale, I don't think that I could actually make it something that's just fast, as much as I tried to. But they did buff Chun. They gave her a lot of cool things, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for all of the changes. Thank you very much for tuning into this dojo session. I'm going to try to have this posted as quickly as I can possibly get it. Like I said, there are probably some things that, almost certainly some applications that I have missed.
Greetings, everybody. Future Sage Armageddon here. something that I already had in mind that I forgot to mention when it comes to the Chun Li buffs and changes, and that's something involving the Serenity Stance Snake Strike. I remember mentioning that the changes to the swift thrust, which is the 4/6 medium punch into the Serenity Stance light kick. The range was still a little bit too far, but then thanks to the changes that have been made to the snake strike, making it 6 frames, now you can actually, if you do happen to hit your opponent from too far with a punish counter, you can actually just go into a snake strike and then run your Oki this way because of how far it reaches. So the changes that they have made have made a move that was almost completely useless in every regard for the most part, outside of a few gimmicks, have some type of use because you can run your Oki even when you don't have any meter. If you're in Burnout and you don't have any meter, and your opponent with something, you can do that, and that knocks them down. Now your opponent could recover in place, but for the most part, you can, that the blowback of this move it can potentially help in keeping them at bay. Or if you wanted to just really reset the neutral, you can go in for a strike throw mix on your opponent. And if they happen to check the throw, guess what? It's going to push them away from you anyway. That's one of the cool things about this, because obviously when you're in Burnout, you're probably going to want to stay away from your opponent because everybody just masses drive impact the moment you blink when you're in Burnout. So you can't really, Chun already can't really pressure, but even if you tried to pressure, they would just use freaking drive impact on you. So it's one of the same thing with when it comes to the heavy punch. Now that the snake strike allows you to actually be able to get a clean hit off of this, it allows for you to actually be able to whiff punish people. So even if you don't hit their main body, because as we mentioned, you have to, in order for this to work with swift thrust, you have to hit their main body hurt box. If you hit if you make contact with their main hurt box, you're not going to miss this. But sometimes when you're whiff punishing, you catch their arm. Now, this is still a headache. This doesn't solve the problem of Chun Li being an absolute nightmare to control when it comes to mental stacking the situation, because you have to be ready for so many different things. You have to, I'm fighting my opponent, and I got to make sure that if I'm too far from them, then I got to make sure I do the right punish counter follow up to extend the combo. I don't want to whiff and get blown up, right? But that's just Chun's identity, and it doesn't look like they're ever going to backpedal on that, unfortunately. They seem adamant. They seem very adamant to making sure that Chun Li is that's a part of her identity, is just your brain being fried, just trying to control her. Something that you can do if you just want to be safe is you could always just, do this every time you punish counter your opponent. It's not going to miss because this goes very far. Right, it's pretty much impossible. It's impossible to miss a punish counter for most moves if you do the snake strike follow up. And you still have Oki even if you don't. Even if you are in Burnout, you can still Oki her. Now you do have to be careful when you are in Burnout, because if you are too far away from them, a lot of your options won't work. So you might have to default to jab if you think you're too far away. But if you're closer, you can follow up like this, right? That's the addendum that I wanted to go ahead and add to the patch notes discussion dojo session, and that I had forgot to mention in the main session. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and continue on with the rest of the content.
There is one other change that they made to the Light Hazanshu, but I don't know what the application is before I end the video. It has something to do with being able to combo off of this. If your opponent is mid-air, if you hit them in the air with some medium kick Serenity Stance, you can go into the Light Hazanshu for a combo that kind of knocks them to the ground. Now, I don't know exactly what the application. Let's get Ryu to just do a regular jump. I don't know exactly what the application for this will be that's gonna be good, but I'm pretty sure the lab monsters will figure that out, right? And I'm actually messing it up. See, that's one of the changes that they made too. But I don't think that's gonna be that significant. But we'll see. maybe outside of some combos to try to confuse people so they don't know what you're doing, in order to get some setups that they don't know how to deal with to confuse them, right? But I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference. The big changes are easily going to be her heavy punch is now more effective because of the buffs to Snake Strike. And light Hazanshu actually gives Chun Li some teeth. So now there are going to be players rolling their eyes when they see this character's face pop up. It's not going to happen yet, but as people start picking up on it, I bet money they're going to start rolling their eyes when they see Chun Li, because they're going to just randomly get YOLO'd by this. And it's going to be very annoying to have to deal with, I'm pretty sure, right? So definitely going to be some good changes for Chun Li here. I think that they don't seem significant, but they are going to they help to bring her kit together. They help to make her more unique in general, and they also help to deal with some of her problems indirectly. They help with the meter management issues. They help with the lack of ability to use this move. This is still a risky move, but now there's a reward. There's a reason to use it. Taking risks is something that you do in fighting games, but there has to be a reason to take the risk, right? So they made some really cool changes to our dearest Chun Li here, and I'm very glad to have been able to see that. But that's pretty much going to be it for this dojo session. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Feel free to like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you're willing. And this is going to be Sage Armageddon signing out. Have an awesome day. Take care.